You can all join palms. Repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. Thanks for being here. Nowhere else better to be? That was kind of a question. No. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you here? You heard about it? I repeat things a lot, mainly for our millions of YouTube followers, so otherwise we get hate mail. Just kidding. What'd you hear?
Basically just heard that it was a place you could go for meditation. I've been wanting to try that out for quite a while.
Nice. Yeah. Well, we're glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
First.
Interest in meditation and just things kept coming up in my life that seemed weird.
Yeah, Buddhism's kind of funny like that. Like it just, for 2,500 years, when you look at historical teachings of the Buddha and how it has spread, and you look at the very kind of technical journey of it, that's how Buddhism spreads historically, is through the images. It's always the images that are seen first in a culture, and that brings some sense of curiosity, question, which then leads to introspection and some awareness that maybe we're not as peaceful and happy in our life as we had always told ourselves we were, So, and with social media these days, it's you click on one little thing of the Buddha and you're going to be flooded for the rest of your life. So, I guess there's worse things to be flooded with, Yeah, it's hard, I know. You've only been here 5 minutes, you're crying already. You're not alone. That's what this stuff does to you. It really, it'll open your heart, break you down, and help put you back together. So, thanks for being here. Yeah. Sorry, you probably didn't know when I asked for a show of hands that you then get, drilled with stuff. What brings you here?
Support from my girlfriend.
Right on. Awesome. Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it. Support's important. In Buddhism, we call that a Sangha, which is community. And the community of people at the time of the Buddha, it was the monks and, the Buddha and then the nuns, and kind of fast forward 2,500 years. And in a modern day, it's all the people that come together to sit and practice meditation and look at Buddhist teachings. That's the community. That's the Sangha. And you challenge each other. You support each other. You hold each other accountable. It's like having a workout buddy, kind of. Yeah. So it tends to help that way. So thanks. Well, welcome. Anyone else new who wants to share why they're here? Probably not after all that. So, all right. I think we'll just get started with meditation. To those again who are, or for the first time who are joining virtually, good to see you all. Thanks for being here. Feel free to introduce yourself as you already have. There's a chat box on your screen, so chime in as you wish. With the meditation practice, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. All right? You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds outside, sounds inside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. So don't expect perfect silence. The sooner we learn to not expect things, the easier life will be. And it starts with a meditation practice. So you're not trying to shut your mind off. You're not trying to think nothing. You're not trying to empty all of your thoughts. You're going to sit and breathe, and that's it. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide to the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Same thing if you're on a bench or chair, just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable for you. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. It doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means your leg hurts. If you have to cough, obviously if you're sick, please don't be here, but if you have to just naturally cough, just cough. You don't have to get up, run outside, go all the way down there and cough 5 times because we can hear you the same thing there, right? So you're better off just staying where you are, cough it in place, and we'll continue on. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continuing this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness. In quiet. Wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, and no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you respond to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond every other 20-minute period of your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Meditation is not an escape, as often people think it is, especially those who might be new. There's this idea that my life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, and I'm angry, sad, depressed, anxious, and miserable, so I'm going to meditate and fix everything. I wish it was that easy. Meditation is not the escape, it's direct perception into the present moment. And only when we abide in the present moment can we begin to recognize what's actually going on with us. It is this experience, this opportunity that allows us to set down all of the pride, all of the ego, all of the things that are causing so much of our suffering, and just breathe. And become aware of, why is my life so hectic and crazy? Why am I unpleasant and sad? Why? To deeply contemplate and explore that. But for many who are new, or even many who've been at this for a long time, the approach that out there, everything's crazy and I'm going to run to my place for meditation, you're going to spend a lot of time running. And this practice is not about running. It's about sitting or walking or eating. It's everything else you're doing too, but it's waking up to the present moment, not running away from it. That's that expression, wherever you go, there you are. Whatever's in your head, whatever thoughts, they're all there. So meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's not a business. It's an opportunity to become aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And then share that with those around us. Very often we come into Buddhist practice to help ourselves, and I get that. That's what leads most people here, or wherever their practice is. Most of you didn't show up today thinking, I'm going to make life better for everybody else. That's not usually what leads us to this practice. But as a side effect, when we begin to take care of ourselves and make ourselves a little happier, kinder, gentler people, that has a huge impact on those around us. We spend so much time trying to fix, change, control, manipulate everything outside of us. And this practice is an opportunity to work on us. That's why it's so much fun and everybody loves it so much. Because you get to hold up a mirror and reflect back on the only individual in your life that is causing all of your pain and all of your suffering. And at the same time, all of your joy and all of your happiness. That individual is you. So that's the good news. The good news is you have the ability to be pleasant and kind and enjoy life, or you have the ability to do whatever the opposite of that is. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning, and I'll just respond to whatever's on your mind. And for those joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to chime in, say hello. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, and I'll do my best to respond there as well. So, thoughts, questions? Oh, there you go. I saw the head, and usually the head is followed by a hand, but I think the head was directing me to that hand. Yeah. Hi.
I guess this is a practice question. When we first started sitting, there
Yeah.
was a very, to me, distracting sound of helicopters.
Really?
You probably didn't notice it, but I noticed it. And I was really getting irritated by it, and noticing the irritation and recognizing this is wanting something to be other than how it is. So I wanted to change my reaction. So trying to change two things, wanting the helicopters to be quiet and wanting myself to stop being annoyed. So what I ended up finally doing was breathing into the place where I felt the annoyance, hoping that that would dissipate it. And it seemed to, but then also the helicopters stopped.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works.
We need to go on tour with a helicopter. All right. Such a beautiful question, and I'm so glad you brought up the helicopter. I could spend the next 3 hours breaking down what you just said, and it's really wonderful because where to begin? Oh my! You said "I want" about 8 times in what you just shared with me. Okay. One of those things, if I'm not mistaken, I guess we could go back and review the film, but you said, I wanted the helicopter to be quiet. When was the last time you met a quiet helicopter? Never have. But well, hang on. One step at a time. Not only did you want it to be quiet, then you wanted it to go somewhere else. It was going somewhere else. When was the last, well, this is not true. My question was going to be, when was the last time you had a helicopter stay in one place? Helicopters are moving. And they're moving where they need to, because maybe they're rescuing someone, maybe they're saving someone's lives, maybe they're chasing someone who's in here in meditation and really needs to be caught. We don't know what's going on with that helicopter. Like I said, there's so many things I want to say. I'm trying to stay on point here. Every Saturday at 11 o'clock, the Dharma Bum Temple funds a helicopter company to fly. Just to piss you off. Is it your first time here?
No, it's my third time.
Third time, okay. Well, we'll just pretend it was your first time. Well, let me ask you this. The first 2 times you were here, were there helicopters? No. So my example will still work. You came here. You had an idea. I'm going to meditation. And believe me, you're not, who else was annoyed by the helicopter? Honestly, come on. All right, so enough hands, right? So there's this idea we play into our head. I'm going to meditation. My life is loud and crazy and busy, and I just want to get away from everything. I'm going to go to my quiet, peaceful place and enjoy my silence. And then there's a darn helicopter ruining your plans completely. You ever had your plans ruined throughout your day? For how many years? Many, right? That's life. The challenge, the practice, I don't want to negate the beauty of the practice that you shared. I want to give that some props, and then I want to completely negate it. Meaning, the practice that you shared, which is, I want to send, so you recognized it bothered you, it annoyed you because you had an expectation of silence, as we all would. We're coming to meditation, we think it's going to be silent. You recognized your annoyance, you recognized it wasn't going away, all those kinds of things. So you did the perfect, beautiful practice, loving kindness, metta, of I'm going to send love and healing to myself while I have annoyance for the helicopter. Beautiful. But it didn't work, okay? That's a wonderful practice. Now I'm going to completely negate it by saying, why even have to reach that point? Why not understand that we know nothing about that helicopter? We don't know what it's doing. We don't know where it's going. Kind of the things I rattled off before. We don't know what's going on with the helicopter. Why do we have to want to try to control everything? Why do we want to have to try to fix it? Because this is what it's really all about. Do you like, I saw the eyes get really wide. Do you like to control things in your life? People, places, things, situations? How's that work for you? Not so well. How long have you been at this practice of meditation, Buddhism, mindfulness, whatever?
On and off for 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, I could tell just by the way you laid out your question that you've been at this for a while, right? And that's why, again, I'm a Zen practitioner. I'm not the loving kindness guy. I'm way too mean to be the loving kindness guy. But I like to cut through this, like, I'm going to send love to me for healing over my frustration and say, it's not about you. It's about the helicopter doing what it needs to do. Saving someone's life, catching someone on the run who may go harm someone. When we make practice, you use the word practice, not about us. For me, this practice becomes so much simpler. But when it is all about us, then we have to figure out, well, here's the pain, here's the discomfort, here's the annoyance. I'm going to send love to that. And then it stopped anyways, you know? I'm just giving you a different approach. Both are beautiful. For those who've never heard this practice, never heard this approach, when you go through your day, it's like not even noon yet, so you'll have plenty of opportunities today. And when you're frustrated and when you're annoyed and when you're irritated, whatever that metaphor is of the helicopter, when that occurs in your life today, which it will, probably before 2:00, the practice is to recognize, I don't like this. This hurts. And give yourself some love and some compassion and some kindness and recognize you're just human doing your best. That's my, paraphrasing this beautiful practice of sending love and kindness to ourselves. The flip side is the other approach I said, which said, hey, not about you, folks. That practice for me has been much more effective in my own personal life. So, and I also just in general, go ahead. Yeah.
How long did it take you to, I know you're still working on it.
Yeah.
When a situation is kind of unacceptable and you realize I can't control that situation.
How long did it take me to get there? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Well, let me start by saying this, going back to, what's your name? I'm sorry. Robin. The way you introduced, or I think at the beginning part of your question, you said a helicopter, and I made a joke about what helicopter, and you said, I think you probably didn't hear it, right? So I obviously heard it. Very often people in meditation, a lot more with like younger college kids, they would say something like, I was in such a deep meditative state, I didn't even hear the helicopter. No, that meant you were asleep, okay? You heard the helicopter. You're supposed to hear the helicopter. It's there. But the question, which really ties into how long or something like that, the first part I want to recognize is I heard the helicopter just like everybody else. My initial thought was beautiful. What a wonderful lesson for us all to sit with this morning. That was the first thing that went in my head. Equally tied with, maybe a millisecond later, this is really going to be annoying, people. And, secretly smiling in my own head because I'm grateful for the opportunity for us to learn this practice, right? How long did that take? I don't know. I think even what you said, which, as you said, I'm a work in progress. First of all, thank you for recognizing that. Too many people think that, when you sit up here, that means you got this all figured out, which for those who are new, we don't. We're just as much of a mess as everybody else is. So keep that in mind. Don't let the shaved head and the sitting fool you. I think I just told the story recently, but how many of you heard me tell the Hawaiian Punch story? Okay, perfect. So only a few of you, right? I'm going to tell it again. Did you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tell it again because it's relevant. So I got introduced to this practice in college, which was, I was 20, so 27 years ago. I read Buddhist stuff for 6 or 7 years, thought I was cool because I could read Zen books, but still living my life in ways that caused nothing but destruction. And 2003, started at the Buddhist temple down the street, and was there for 2 to 3 years, then go to the monastery in Taiwan for 11 months, and then come back in 2006. So end of 2006, opened the temple, early 2007. So this is 15 years ago. I'm driving downtown, getting off the freeway. And I'm at this time, I had abandoned all of my worldly possessions, except for my convertible Mustang, of course, because, every Buddhist needs to hang. You're happy about that, right? I eventually abandoned it, but, every Buddhist needs to hold on to their important Mustang. And so I'm getting off the freeway, and 2 cars merging into one, and I got in front of this car, technically probably cut them off getting off the freeway. And at least it was perceived by them that I cut them off, because 2 going into one, I get in front, they're cut off. And driving the convertible, tops down, arms on the side, music's playing, all this stuff. And this is, by the way, post monastery life, post 4+ years of being all into my Buddhist practice, right? Still cruising with my Mustang, blasting the radio, and all of a sudden, I just get hit with something. And somebody had taken a 32-ounce big gulp and threw it at me. Now, it was a perfect shot because it hit not too low where it would have hit the side of the car and I wouldn't have really noticed too much, or maybe, it didn't go too high because that would have gone over my head. It hit right on the windows. And what that meant was that caused the top to come off of the Hawaiian Punch, and I am covered in Hawaiian Punch. White shirt, white interior, covered in Hawaiian Punch, okay? And what I found out, during this whole event, it was 4 kids, probably high school, college age kids, that obviously were upset that I got in front of them. And they felt it appropriate to throw a big gulp. My first thought, immediate thought, was laughter. I laughed at what a perfect shot it was. Why? Because I would have been that 16-year-old kid who would have done that exact same thing. And when I was 16 making that throw, that's where I would have been aiming. I mean, I'm a baseball guy, so I would have known where I was going. And that's where I would have wanted it, thinking, well, if it hits there, it's going to open up and cover whoever I'm throwing it at, right? So my immediate thought was laughter. Right after that, I went to sadness. I was sad that we live and create a world where just because one car gets in front of the other, people feel like they must throw something at someone. And again, I know that too well. So driving along, big gulp thrown, splashes all over me. My immediate thought is laughter. My second thought is sadness. I get downtown a couple minutes later to where I was going. I get out, my buddy's there, and he's like, what happened? I tell him the whole story. This kid threw a big gulp at me. It was a perfect shot. I laughed. And we go inside, I'm talking about it. And it wasn't until a little while later that I realized anger never arose. Now, I'm a kid who grew up angry at everything and everyone. And if it had been 5 years earlier, would have been a quite different ending. Chasing them down, using the baseball bat that would have been in my trunk, damage to their car from the baseball bat, because that's what I would have done. Like, no joke. I mean, I sit here week after week for so many years, emphasizing things that I used to do and how I used to be. And people are like, no, he couldn't have been that way. Like, I'm trying to convince people that, yes, I would have taken a baseball bat and I would have smashed in their car. That's what I would have done. And not thought twice about it. And then gotten in my car and driven away and felt perfectly fine. I think what's important here probably many things, but to your question specifically is the timing of it, like how long it takes is irrelevant. Meaning, if I said to you it takes 3 years and 7 months, that's a really dangerous response, because then you're like, uh-oh, my clock's ticking. How come I'm not there yet? And then on 3 year, 8 month, you're like, well, this stuff doesn't work. Most important with how long does this stuff take is to abandon the idea of how long it takes and recognize, as you said at the beginning, we're all works in progress and we're still practicing. But what I can promise you is if you stay diligent with practicing compassion towards self and others, dropping so much of the pride and ego, making life about other people and not you, this stuff works. And it'll work in ways that are different than you would ever even imagine. Very often people think that Buddhism is about like learning meditation or learning what's in the Buddhist sutras or being able to memorize or recite certain things. It's in your everyday life. It's the helicopter metaphors. It's in line at Starbucks. It's, getting your car washed and you get it back and there's a little bit of a smudge on there and you're unhappy because your car wasn't cleaned appropriately. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's in these moments that Buddhist practice plays out. Holidays are coming up. That's always the greatest time around here because we're just weeks away from being able to spend time with your closest, most beautiful family and friends. So we usually see the most people around Thanksgiving time. So, yeah. Yes?
I had an experience when I first came. I think it was the second time.
Yeah.
There were ambulances and police cars the whole time. And I thought, what the hell's going on out there? Why don't they have air conditioning and shut the windows and everything? And after about 4 or 5 months, we had another day that was similar.
Yeah.
And I was amazed. My first thought was that they're going to help somebody.
Yeah.
They're going to save somebody's life. Then I got annoyed.
See, it took me years, 4 months, So, yeah, it's so true. And the awareness of those things, like, oh, yeah. And like you said, the first thought 4 or 5 months later was they're going to help someone. But then let's be real. The annoyance then kicked in afterwards. But there's still, we shift, we change. Our perceptions of what's important really does change. Our perceptions of, thinking about others does really come to the forefront of our minds, where for maybe so many years, it wasn't there.
I still have trouble with the garbage trucks.
The garbage trucks. And so maybe not specifically to that, but we label the noises. There's a tremendous talk on, it'll confuse most people, but that's partially the point. Shunryu Suzuki, a great Zen master, built San Francisco Zen Center. There's a beautiful YouTube talk, very few videos of him. And if you just Google Suzuki and noise versus sound, it's an incredible talk of him breaking down the sounds of the birds and how there are sounds that we love or sounds that we can, create meaning behind, like the ambulance, like the helicopter. So partially, those sounds we can create. It kind of comes back to, sending love and kindness to ourselves. We can create a beautiful meaning. But something like a trash truck, that's a little bit tougher to create something that's beautiful. You know why that trash truck is beautiful?
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't here, then we'd be smelling a pile of trash. So we begin to see, and this is where the emptiness teachings really come into play, that we begin to see the endless causes and conditions and our absolute ability to have zero actual understanding of what's going on with anything, anywhere, ever. And when you can open up to that idea, and you can stop trying to figure everything out as if you can check it off in a box and say, well, this is right. When you can do that, I think you begin to understand this practice. Yeah. I'm glad you raised your hand because you were smiling this whole time.
Yeah, I love this topic because where I meditate regularly, people walk underneath about every 2 minutes talking.
Yeah.
And so I think about this one a lot because at first it pissed me off. It's like you're ruining my meditation spot. But now I see it as an opportunity because like these kinds of distractions are everywhere.
Yeah.
And today, when we started meditating, I noticed the helicopter. My first thought was, I wonder what this is going to be like. Because I've tried to replace that annoyance with curiosity. And for me, that's been really powerful. What is it? What can I learn here? What's going to be different because there's a helicopter versus what I was expecting, or really my default is silence. And so it's like, okay, I'm used to silence. What does it feel like now with this thing, this new
For
thing
sure.
going on? And so I don't get annoyed. I get curious.
For sure. And it's always, the seated meditation practice, which I get it in theory, other than like, Josh, Vicky, Tom, and a few other dear loved ones, you're probably not going to sit down and do a silent meditation with like Metallica on, but you could. And I mean, I grew up in high school. It's all I listened to, right? And so I've had those experiences now sitting with that. And our reaction to those things it teaches us a lot about ourselves. And it also helps us understand, like you're saying, that it's really a reflection, at least this is what I heard from what you're saying, about our experience in that moment. And whether it's people walking by or the helicopters, what is our experience like in that moment? What does it do to us? And the crazy thing is, to wrap up this thought, is that that's just when we're sitting in meditation. Now, the reality is we spend a very little amount of time in quiet, seated meditation. We're actually running around all day long doing stuff. And those helicopters or the ambulances or the trash trucks or whatever it is, those are just metaphors for everything in your life that's causing you conflict. And when we just sit quietly and hear sounds, it's a good reflection on, what about when there's sounds in our life? Like real sounds. And again, the sound is just a metaphor for conflict because our life is filled with that. So I want to address here a couple things online. At least let me read them first. So there's one question, just out of curiosity: does Buddhist culture acknowledge, celebrate Halloween or any similar traditions around this time of year? By similar tradition, I mean remembering ancestors or loved ones who have passed. Yeah, great question. And so it's so nice to like wrap up as we get towards the end here, a very beautiful, practical exploration of Buddhism with Ghost Month. Also very prevalent throughout many Buddhist traditions and cultures, right? So just pondering how to sum this up. Buddhism is 2,500 years old, and it came from India, where you had endless gods and goddesses, right? This is 500 years before Christ. I talk about this stuff a lot. But this is a time where, for the most part, everybody there believed in rebirth, reincarnation, continuation of consciousness, heaven realms, hell realms, and endless realms in between, above and below. How many of you came here this morning because you wanted to learn about the hell realms? Right? There's always one. But all that stuff exists in Buddhism. It doesn't mean you're here for it. It doesn't mean I talk about it. It doesn't mean I've spent my life studying it. But when questions come up about it, I want to address it and, be honest with the fact that there's a lot about technical, fundamental, dare I use that word, Buddhist teachings and cultures that exist, that in a Western way of practicing Buddhism tend to get ignored or drastically altered. My personal opinion is they're ignored or altered because there's a fear of, oh no, what are these Western people going to think about actual Buddhist stuff? So they alter it, manipulate it, and change it to try to appease us folks. Right? I'm just not a fan of that. And Buddhism talks about rebirth, reincarnation, continuation of consciousness, different realms. I mean, just Google Buddhism hell realms. That'll wake you up. It's fun. It's fascinating, right? Might not be what we're into, might not be what we explore, might not be what drives us with Buddhist practice, but it doesn't mean it's not there. And so you have Ghost Month, where it's the time of the year, and this was maybe going on about a month ago. Again, we don't necessarily put on our website, hey, it's Ghost Month, let's all hang out at the Dharma Bum Temple. But I can promise you, and Travis is back there smiling, grinning ear to ear, those of us who are in this place every day, we recognize that stuff, we acknowledge that stuff, we do our offerings, we transfer merit to ancestors, because that's the month that past ancestors come out, and they come to temples, because that's the time they get to hear the Dharma, and hopefully be reborn into a better place. All this stuff is in the teachings. But if you lead with this stuff, you pretty much don't get too many people coming back. There'd be about 4 of you sitting here next week. This is all we talked about, right? Now, those 4 of you, you'd be all in. Maybe we'll have a class on it. But so I'm rambling a bit as usual, but I want to acknowledge the fact that specifically to Halloween, no, Buddhism doesn't have Halloween. Buddhism doesn't do the traditional Western holidays. Buddhism historically, traditionally, has one celebration, if you could call it that, and that's called Vesak Day. And that is usually around it's based on a lunar calendar, but somewhere around March, April timeframe, right? Somewhere around March or April, give or take a couple of lunar things. And it celebrates the birth of the Buddha, the death of the Buddha, and the day of his awakening. So it celebrates all 3 of these at once in what's called Vesak Day, V-E-S-A-K. And this is a celebration where you, very traditional, a lot of Buddhist cultures, they take a little baby Buddha. It's a cool little image and statue of the Buddha when he was a baby. And the story is that when he was born, he took 7 steps. This is a story, okay? And they say that when he was born, he took 7 steps, right? Aren't we all behind in our child development stages, right? And with these 7 steps, lotus petals blossomed from each step. And he put his finger up like this, and he said, this is my last life. I am born to free all people from suffering. And so at this Vesak Day, at this celebration, they do what's called a bathing of the Buddha ceremony. And if you go to cultural Buddhist temples, you'll see this there, which 20 of them are within 10 miles of us. And there's a formal ritual and ceremony where you pour water over the baby Buddha and things like that. So a lot of cultural, historical things that exist in Buddhism that a lot of Western folks just don't get introduced to. And it's not our focus with the Dharma Bum Temple. It never has been. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. Vesak Day, Ghost Month, and last thing I'll say is different cultures. In the Thai forest tradition, Thai culture, they've just had Katina, which is a really big celebration of offerings to the monks. Each Buddhist culture has their own interpretations and celebrations that have existed for 2,500 years. So they're all very different. So I hope that's helpful. From helicopters to Ghost Month. Anything else before we close? Yeah.
What is that statue behind you?
Oh my.
It's called?
The emaciated Buddha? Well, I'm glad you said what's it called, because that's the short answer. It's called the emaciated Buddha. And we're a little bit late for me to tell the whole story right now. No, you're fine. Don't worry. But the 60-second answer is Siddhartha Gautama. That is the Prince Siddhartha. And I know you're new, so I'm not sure how much you know about Buddhism, but you know the Buddha was a real person. So he was a dude. He was a prince. Father was a king. That's what made him a prince. He was sheltered for 29 years, left home at 29, roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years, and saw old age, sickness, and death in an ascetic. He decided to leave home at 29 and said, I can't live with a world of, all this, all the wealth, all the riches, all the women, everything you can imagine when there's a world out there that suffers. So he went on an ascetic path, and this is him on that journey. The ascetics at that time in India, yogis, their practice was to starve themselves. And he thought that if they overcame physical attachment to physical form, that they would awaken. And so it said that he ate 1 grain of rice a day. And he was so skinny that you could literally take your fingers and touch. And then at 30, on that journey, he came to a riverbed. Someone offered him food, decided to eat it. Those 5 guys left him. They called him a sellout, a traitor, a food eater. And he ate, and he regained his physical strength. And that's what the teaching the middle path in Buddhism comes from, where you got to find a balance. Emaciated near death, not the way. Excess that we tend to live in, not the way. Then he taught for 45 years and he died at 80. But we picked this statue when we opened the Dharma Bum Temple as our main shrine statue, and still today, because it represented us. We're not enlightened Buddhas. We're not these fully awakened bodhisattvas that exist in Buddhism. We're just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually near death. And if we don't do something to take care of ourselves, it's not going to be good. So we sit with him on this kind of peer-to-peer level of like, hey, you are us and we are you. And if you figured your stuff out, so can we. So that's the emaciated Buddha, which you typically don't see as main shrine Buddhas, but to us, if we don't understand where we're dying, we can't understand how to live. So that's the short story. Yeah, for sure. All right, so we'll close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace and free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to more than 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic, and to their family and friends who still suffer to this day. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thank you for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this space 15 years ago, initially downtown until 5 years ago, to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Just about every night we have different practices going on, people leading different schools of Buddhism. We're not one specific sect. We introduce most of the schools of Buddhism, and that way you kind of see what resonates with you. So we have a large recovery sangha, so anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, that meets a couple times a week. We have a family sangha for parents, kids, toddlers, and teens. That meets once a month as well. We have a college group at San Diego State. We started the nation's first and only Buddhist fraternity. So we do this and basically ruin the lives of college kids forever. And always something going on. Buddha for You is open. It's downstairs if you need anything. Other than that, just the usual. Glad to see everybody. We do, if you want to stick around for 5 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, we don't have speaking of trash, we don't have a cleaning crew. Somehow that trash needs to get into the dumpster for the cans to be picked up. So there's a sign by the door. Trash cans, if they're full, can be emptied in the bathrooms. There's a sign sheet by the door that if there's anything, wiping down handles or whatever it is. And we have a crew that meets outside to water, to rake. There's a ton of the front of the temple, all the palm trees, all the berries fell. So it becomes a bit of a hazard for people to trip and slip. So if anybody wants to actually take 10 minutes and sweep out front, that would be great. This gets shared and announced every single week, and if people actually stick around and do it, it makes it even better. So thank you for doing that in advance. I wish you well. We'll see you soon.